and we'll then head you over to our expert, Gemma, to talk about the first part of the session. So here we go. And what we're going to do today is part of the requirements that we have right now is that before you go on any kind of exchange or placement, we need to prepare you. And that has been always the case. We made some changes and we're going to go to these changes with you. So this is the session for arts where we're going to talk. This is the second session where we're going to tell you a little bit about what to expect. So the purpose really of this session is to enhance your, to allow you to enhance your experience, to consider what are the risks, what are the requirements that we have at NUIG, and what supports you have in place, which is very important. And we have three parts for this presentation. We'll start by a session on the first part on wellness and dealing with your culture shock, which Gemma McNally has very kindly offered to go through with you. Then we're going to talk about the practicalities of going abroad for study abroad or for practice or placement. And then we'll talk about the student mobility assessment form, which is a new part of your mobility as of last year. I'm going to hand you over to Gemma. So I'll stop sharing my screen and she can take you through the wellness and dealing with culture shock. So Gemma, I'm heading over to you and I'll start recording.
Great. So hi everyone. My name is Gemma McNally and I am a student counsellor in student counselling. So we are going to talk a little bit today around culture shock and kind of looking after yourself with when culture shock does hit, because it probably will. I don't know why my screen is, oh, there we are. Normally this is actually given by my colleague Fiona Roach, so she is on her holidays, so I'm kind of jumping into her spot here, so her slides, so apologies. So our agenda then, just for this little section, is about understanding culture shock and what it is, and believe it or not, reverse culture shock when we're coming back the other way. The symptoms of both, how you can manage it or support yourself if you do get culture shock, and believe it or not, most people do at some level. What we have here kind of in support here at NUI, because even though you're going away, we're still here for you at any point. And then we might just finish with a very quick awareness exercise that you'll be able to bring with you for if you do feel a little bit overwhelmed at any point. So yeah, so this is just a little awareness of how we are feeling, empowers us to meet ourselves there. So we have to be aware that we're feeling something in order to help ourselves. If we don't know we're feeling it, we can't empower ourselves. So that's just that message. So culture shock, what is it? It's the impact of moving from a familiar culture to one which is unfamiliar. It's an experience described by people who've traveled abroad on holidays, for work, for study, living there. I think it's one of these things that when you leave the familiar and go to the unfamiliar, basically. And although it's normally a temporary phase, it's important to know there are things that you can do to help, and that some of the worrying effects, of which there are many, we'll go through some, can be minimized. So don't feel that thing of it's not going to happen to me. Because it can hit you whatever culture you come from and however experienced or well-traveled you are. So, you know, it doesn't matter if you've been all over the world already, this could be a different experience for you. It might be the first time you're going away from home by yourself, without family or without friends, and that can be daunting in itself. So recognizing culture shock then, how do we know we've got culture shock? We can be bored, we can be unmotivated, we can withdraw from others, our activities that we've kind of thought we'd get involved in, we suddenly aren't interested in doing it. We can be grumpy, sad, helpless. It can be quite a disempowering feeling of helplessness, of kind of what have I done, why am I here? We can end up sleeping a lot, getting really tired, irritation about delays or frustrations, and this is a big one, anxiety about how to do things. Like public transport systems. I know myself from landing in other countries, and you might not have the language, or you might have a basic amount of the language, and suddenly you're trying to figure out how to get from one side of the city to the other. It can be really overpowering, that kind of, so that anxiety is very much know that you're anxious, It's normal to feel anxious. It's normal. What we would describe here in counselling is kind of normal range anxiety. I would expect you to be a bit anxious doing things for the first time. You might actually start suffering kind of physiological kind of pains and aches, a longing to be at home, to just think, oh my God, what have I done? And then we also go into this criticising local customs or ways of doing things. You kind of get very critical about their ways of doing things, and why can't they just do it the way we do them? Of course, that's not how it works. The causes then, like what causes culture shock? Why do we suddenly go into culture shock? It's a shock to our senses, our nervous system, a new environment, their customs, but also their food and drink. The physiological part of it can be very much around what you're eating, the environment you're in. The food might look the same, it might not taste the same. Your system takes a bit of time to get used to their different foods. Even the sights and smells and sounds. I remember myself when you land somewhere like Bangkok in Thailand, it's like this whole sensory explosion. It smells different, it looks different, people are different, so you need to be aware that these things, your body is going to try and seek out familiar stuff. Actually, you miss them, so your body looks for stuff that it might be familiar, and of course that's nearly impossible. Sorry, a car alarm has gone off outside here. Likewise, when unfamiliar sights, sounds, smells, tastes are present, that causes disorientation as well. Sorry, I'm just going to close the window. My apologies. 1 second. Sorry about that. When unfamiliar sights and sounds are present, it can create discomfort and disorientation as well. So it's this whole mush on your system of what's going on, where can I go, how do I find the familiar, can I find the familiar? And then of course the most important one, or can be the most important one, is the shock of the separation from important people. So people that you might normally go to, your family, your friends, when you're a bit uncertain about something, that you would go to for support and guidance, and suddenly they're not there. So that can be a massive one. That can be very lonely feeling. Jet lag, if you're traveling a distance, you will be jet lagged. So just be a little bit aware of that. You'll walk out of an airport, you might be traveling for, 12, 14 hours more. And you suddenly come out into a very different space, and that can be really shocking to the system. So then, of course, and normally when we leave an airport, the first thing we have to do is look for taxis or buses or trains. And so you need to be quite alert, and your anxiety is going to be present, because your anxiety is the thing that keeps us safe. It keeps us alert. It keeps us motivated. So anxiety is going to rise a little bit in those moments. Just be aware that it's normal. Of course, the elements, I've said some of these, the elements contributing to culture shock will be the climate, really important. That can be massive. It can be roasting hot somewhere. You need to drink water. You need to make sure you're putting water into your system. The food is going to be different. Language, social roles is another big one. Certain cultures don't do things that we do. They might be very offended by some of the stuff that we would do naturally, and we need to watch that. We need to kind of do a little bit of educating ourselves about social roles if we can. Value systems can be different. So, the way they drive on the road might be a little bit more aggressive than we would be. We just need to be aware of these things. Know your location, know the kind of rules of behavior, and see if you can figure out some of them before you get there. Some of them you will learn on the fly, you'll learn them as you go, you'll get things wrong. But if you do your best to kind of comply with whatever culture you're in, they appreciate that. They really appreciate it. We also have, of course, COVID-related tensions and different rules in different places as well at the moment. You need to find out the health advice and enforcement. I'm sure you've already done this with COVID. You'll know your quarantine rules. You'll know what you need to do COVID-wise in the country that you're going to. Very importantly, Irish police are very lenient in comparison with some states that we go to. Our police, for example, are not armed. In most other countries, our police are armed. So something that we might find funny here in Ireland might not be funny over there. And you need to know that. You need to be aware of that. They're much more empowered to use force and that than our Irish police. So just mind yourself in that, kind of know where you're going with that and know what the rules are, around drinking on streets, all that. might not be acceptable over there at all, and you will be pulled up on it. So just know where you're going is what I'd say with that. So I guess there's a big long list of places that you could be going. I know that some of you are going to North America. There's like all of the European countries. Again, I just try and figure out a little bit about the country, do a little bit of research so that you're not going in there completely blind, because culture shock is potential in everyone. So just find out more. I want to talk a little bit about this, the W curve. Okay, this is culture shock. This is an illustration of what culture shock might look like. You might not go through all of this in your own experience of it, but all of these symptoms can be present. So just be aware. It can go faster or slower for different people. So we have the honeymoon period when we arrive there. We're excited. We're in a new culture. You might be kind of intrigued or excited by what's going on in that culture, how they work things, or curious about how things work. You're still very protected at this point, this honeymoon point of kind of your memory of home. So you're kind of, it's all very happy-go-lucky, and isn't this great and exciting? A little bit later, we kind of get into this distressed kind of place, which it might leave you feeling a little bit confused or isolated, and kind of maybe a bit inadequate, because cultures can be huge, and the impact can be kind of, they encroach on our familiar supports and what we do. So you need to just watch. People aren't immediately available to you, so you're going to this kind of distress place. Reintegration then is the next kind of level of it. It's where you might start to reject the differences that you encounter. You might start to feel angry at their culture, angry at the way they do things, that hostile. They don't do things the way I do them. Why don't they, and why do I have to change to be part of this culture? You might kind of think, you might think I dislike it in comparison with home. I don't like the way they do things. But the most important thing about this is to know that that's healthy. It is a healthy reaction to it. It is just a reaction. You're actually reconnecting with what you value about yourself and your own culture. So that's kind of what's happening there. So then we kind of come into this autonomous phase, which is like, we kind of begin to accept the differences and maybe the similarities between cultures. The situations will start to become a little bit more familiar. You might figure out the travel system, for example. You might figure out how to get from A to B. Your language might be improving a little bit because you're there. So your French, if it's French, might be getting better as you're there. And your experiences are growing. So it's very healthy in this stage. And then, of course, we have independence. So the differences and the similarities become very valued and important to you, and you begin to realize, the potential. You're kind of gaining your own momentum and your own self-esteem, and you're beginning to realize, I can do this, I'm able to do this, I'm able to get myself from A to B in all sorts of situations. Or you're able to socialize on a level with people that they get, or all of that. So situations actually become enjoyable, and you start to just relax into where you find yourself. So this is like, I suppose, just to know that this is a normal, this is the W curve, and we all can go through it. Different stages, it's different for everyone. So just mind yourself in it. Of course, then we just get into like reverse culture shock, and there's also to be considered then reverse culture shock when we're going the other way, when we're coming home. This can be caused by, you might have an idealized version view of home. The expectation of total familiarity, that nothing has changed. So when you get home, you'll think everything is exactly the same, whereas actually it might have changed a little bit. You think you'll be able to pick up exactly where you left off, and maybe that'll be more challenging than you expect. Home might actually fall short of what your imagined home was while you were away. So people have their own lives, people get on with stuff, things do change while you're gone. So being at home might actually feel a little bit foreign initially. So it's kind of a strange. So of course, then you go into the feelings of that. You'll be frustrated, you'll be alienated, you'll be thinking, oh my God, they don't like, misunderstandings between study abroad students, their friends and family. Friends and family might not understand what you've been through. And I suppose this is different for everyone. And it's really important to know that everyone experiences these things like in different ways. So while I'm throwing an awful lot at you, I'm throwing a lot of feelings and emotions and everything at you, you might not necessarily experience 10% of these. but it's to know that whatever you experience, it's probably very normal. So, you know, there's 4 stages again in the research around reverse culture shock. Again, it's that W curve as well. It's like disengagement, the initial euphoria, that honeymoon period, irritability, hostility towards our culture. You might come back and think, oh my God, we're doing this so stupidly in Ireland. We should be doing it the way they do it. And then, of course, there's readjustment, and you adapt. Again, we adapt. I guess if there's one thing I've realized in the last year and a half, as human beings, we're actually very resilient. We're very good at adapting. We're very good at making things, normalizing things. We're resilient. We can adapt quite well. So trust yourself as well. So how do we like manage it then? Like all this is going on, all this like is happening around us, and you're thinking, how am I going to handle it? What happens if I feel all of these things? So some ways to reduce or kind of manage it in yourself is to talk to somebody. You know, there's these kind of pre-trip Q&As that we're doing today, or you can contact us in student counselling at any point, because we're still your student counselling service. Even when you're away, you just contact us through an email, counselling@nuigalway.ie. You could sign up with Silver Cloud. Anxiety can be a big thing in all this culture shock. So Silver Cloud is a CPT. You can sign in using via Aware, which is a service here in Ireland. So if you go into Aware, you'll see Silver Cloud and where you can check in, and that will give you a number of exercises and ways of handling anxiety. Like I said, research the basics before you go. There might be places that sell Irish food and drink, or like English food and drink, which is kind of very similar to our own. You know, it's about knowing that you can bring non-perishables, bring the tea bags with you, bring whatever you need that makes it feel kind of homely. People bring familiar items, like photos can be really important, or even a blanket or your favorite jumper, or something that just helps you to feel a little bit more soothed if your anxiety starts to rise. Have access to helplines that might be able to help you either back here in college or there with your contacts there in whatever country you're in. Sports and social organizations and clubs that might interest you. You know, I know if you play, for example, if you play GAA, you'll probably find a GAA club somewhere around you, and they seem to be all over the world. But other than that, things you're interested in, if you were into basketball, if you were into chess, if you were into like reading or art, or there's loads of organizations. So seek them out. It's also a really good way of making friends. Remember water. If you're in a warm climate, stay hydrated, and especially if, I know none of you will be drinking to excess while you're away, but if you happen to, water, you need to stay hydrated. You need to stay hydrated all day, every day anyway, especially in a very hot climate. I was on 2 friends of mine last night in Greece, and it is 36 degrees over there at the moment at 11 o'clock at night, so they were melting. So it's very different when you're in that kind of a climate. Your sleep hygiene, that is your sleep patterns, how we sleep. Do we sleep well or not well? And when we're anxious, if we're suffering from this culture shock thing, our anxiety might be up, your sleep might go. I'm going to put up a website here that you can go on and check that out if you need to. Remember that alcohol and drugs are actually depressants. You need to remember this. So if you're not feeling okay and you drink a load of drink, you will get a momentary high and then you will get a massive big low. So be really aware of that. Reach out to us, reach out to counselling, reach out to somebody if you need help with that. Anxiety and drugs will cause low mood. So just keep that in your head. Keep in touch with everyone and don't lose contact. But I would also suggest don't overdo the contact, because we do need to try and settle, and we need to try and figure stuff out. And if I'm ringing home every 5 minutes trying to figure stuff out with somebody at home who can't really help us, it can just get more frustrating. So stay in touch, but just don't overdo your contact with home. Try and see if you can kind of integrate yourself into this new culture. It's fabulously exciting. It's great. Like, you're so lucky to be able to go. But just be aware there's a lot of feelings attached to going away as well. Don't forget your normal stuff that you do when you're feeling anxious here at home. You know, exercise, your music, your yoga, if you're meditation, if you're into meditation and mindfulness, watching your favorite show on Netflix. You know, those things work while you're away as well. So just bring your toolbox with you of stuff that you would normally do to make yourself feel calm and to make it kind of self-soothe yourself. Notice, like, do go out into nature. Nature is great. I'm a big advocate of nature. So get out and kind of notice what's around you. Notice that, like, I always know when I'm away, like the birds are different. So there's different sounds even in the trees, or there might be those little cricket things in the bushes that make all this noise. And tune yourself into all of that, because that's part of the experience of being away and being somewhere different. And that's the stuff that you will always have in your memory when you come back. And don't panic. It's okay not to feel totally in the zone. These feelings that you're feeling, that you're going to feel, are absolutely normal. Okay, there's a website there with kind of all that culture shock stuff in it. Again, I'm going to forward these slides to JB, so he might be able to send them out to everyone afterwards. So that's just there for you. This is Dan Segal. He's a very famous therapist. He's got a coping with meltdowns there. If you go into high anxiety, when we go into anxiety, there's a part of our brain called the amygdala. It's the oldest part of our brain back here, back down the base of our head. When we go into panic, our amygdala takes charge, and our amygdala is what puts us into fight, flight, or freeze mode. So that kind of panic mode. What we need to do is be able to take ourselves down off that and realize there's a scale of anxiety of 1 to 10. So we can tame it. We'll name it to tame it. So we're naming the anxiety. We're knowing why we're feeling these feelings that we've been through here with culture shock. We know what's going on. And once I know what's happening, now I can begin to talk myself down. So at the end here, we're just going to do a very quick breath exercise that you can do to help with that, because without going into too much detail about how anxiety works, basically, if I'm standing still, taking a few big deep breaths, the message that you're giving to your brain is that there is nothing unsafe happening. So it doesn't need to be in full danger mode, because you know there's nothing about to happen. Because if I'm standing there taking deep breaths, there's nothing unsafe. So if I have a bear in front of me in the woods, I'm not going to be standing there taking big deep breaths. So breathing is your number one friend when it comes to anxiety. Okay, so just, you can go into that YouTube, he explains all that in a lot more detail for you. This is just a sleep meditation if you need help with sleep. If you're into meditation, some people hate it. If you're into meditation, I would advise you to download an app, any one of the apps. There's Headspace, it's free. And just bring it with you on your phone so you'll have it, and don't be afraid to use it. So there's sleep meditations, there's meditations you can do with your just body scans, just to check in. Again, like I say, culture shock hits us all. Like, it hits us emotionally, it hits us physiologically, it hits us cognitively, all sorts of ways. So sometimes it's nice to just slow the brain down and allow ourselves to just rest. This is actually a sway that is student counselling. Sway, it's one we've set up. There is piles of information on there about all sorts of things. You can scroll up and down through it. You will have to log on to your NUIG account to get into it. But once you're in, there's loads of resources. There's external and internal supports, and there's also lots of self-help stuff in there. So you bring this way, save it onto your computer if you want to, and bring it with you. It's there for use. Okay. This is an important one. Like, when do I seek help? When do I know that I'm not coping? Well, it's basically when none of the above methods that we've been talking about are helping enough. So if I'm still struggling, I've done everything, I can't think of anything else to do, this is when you know you need to seek help. If they're ongoing, if the feelings you're feeling are ongoing, if after a number of weeks you're still in really heightened anxiety, you can't kind of help yourself, calm yourself down, then you do need to seek help there as well. If you can't see it changing, if it's just getting worse, then that's another way to, that's another red flag, what I would call a red flag. If the difficult feelings are worsening over time, watch that in yourself, just be aware of it. And don't wait, is what I'd say to you. Don't wait till things have overwhelmed you. Contact. There's loads of us here, ready and willing to help you and want you to have a good experience while you're away. So where do you get the help then, I suppose, is a good one. Peers and friends, if you can. There might be other students out there with you, hopefully not too far away, that you might be able to seek out. They might be feeling exactly the same stuff as you. Family, if you can talk to family, always one of the best options. Sometimes like they're not an option for people. It depends on where you are. There might be a massive time difference where you are. It might just not be able to, people might not be available, or maybe they just don't get it. Maybe they don't understand what it's like. Hopefully host families and placement officers will be around and about. Your host family will probably have hosted before, and they might understand more than you ever think. So, and don't forget the supports on campus. You are still a student of NUIG, no matter where in the world you are. So reach out to us. We're here. As I say, student counselling is counselling at nuigalway.ie. Couldn't be easier. Do reach out. So that's us. There it is. That's counselling at NUI Galway. The Silver Cloud with Aware, you need to just check into Aware. The website is there. It gives you access to cognitive behavioural therapy, and it tailors it to your specific needs. So it does improve depression and anxiety. It's been shown to do it, and it's very flexible. So you can do it on any device that you have, and it's interactive. So that could be a good option if you're trying to just figure it out yourself. Remember, this is a really important one. This is all part of your learning. It'll broaden your view and your mind, and it allows us to just become more adaptable and tolerant of difference, because it will be different, and be sure that something is going to be different. So it's going to challenge that in you a little bit, but that's okay, because what you're going to learn is what you truly love about home, and maybe the stuff that isn't so good. So stuff that you might think is brilliant here at the moment, you might come home and go, actually, that's not great. So you remember, this is broadening your horizons into the future. And back to this, when we're aware of how we are, we're empowered to meet ourselves there. So once we're aware, once we know what we're doing, then we're empowered to do something about it. Okay. This is a small little breathing exercise. It's to do with the 5 senses. This is for if you find yourself standing at an airport or something and you're feeling a little bit angsty, or you're waiting for a train, or something is happening around you, you can actually just stop for 30 seconds. Got to take big, deep breaths. So when I say breathe, I don't mean breathe up here. When we're anxious, we're inclined to breathe in our throats. So our breath becomes very kind of, where we need to get oxygen down into our lungs. So we need to learn to take just big belly breaths. So you take one big breath, and with each breath, you go through, what can I touch? What can I hear? What can I see? What can I taste? And what can I smell? Okay, it takes 30 seconds, your 5 senses, and with a breath in between each one. And it really works. But you really need to take that time to take a big belly breath. What I love about this is it is something that you can do standing somewhere, or people don't even need to know you're doing it. So it just brings you into the moment, and it allows us to, we might be fretting about something that's about to happen or figuring something out. And this just allows us to step back from that and just come into the moment and see, what can I touch? What can I hear? What's happening right now? And then we get our control back a little bit. It just helps us a little bit. So as I say, I'm going to send all this anyway on to JB, and hopefully he'll be able to give it to you all. And my final slide is just to say, have a great time. I'm very envious. I wish I was you. And have a great trip. And I hope it all goes really well. It was lovely to meet you all. For now, JB, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gemma. Our session is going to kick us out in a few minutes. And so what I'll do, instead of waiting for it to kick us out in 4 minutes, I suggest that we are leaving this. We'll end this session now, and we'll start again with the new link. Again, Gemma, that's absolutely great to get that session from you about what can be done. And remember that, just to before we part for now, anxiety is what your brain is afraid of. And when you do the breathing exercise, you are grounding yourself to where you really are. Okay. And that may seem like really bizarre thing in the context that we are right now, but you'd be surprised at how it helps when you're really stressing. So just exercise a few times so that when you need it, you know what to do. And it really does work. It's quite phenomenal how our body and brain are connected and work together, and how we can create this biofeedback. So we're going to end now. Please join us immediately to the link again. So we'll had another go, and hopefully we'll be able to run through the rest of it in the 40 minutes that we have. Thank you very much. Gabe, if you could just end it for all.